I think I'd like to first of all start by saying I think predicting the future 15 years from now is either very brave or very foolish. I go to my someone I followed as a child, and that's Yogi Berra, who was a baseball coach and catcher in the New York Yankees in the last century, famous for his quotes, and I think this one is particularly strong, which says, "It's tough to make predictions, especially about the future." And I think he's captured it very nicely there. And together with Lisa Simpson, who suggests to us in the cartoon, while we may understand the trend toward a new way of communicating on telephones, we often don't get the form or the final product very accurate. And so certainly that's not how we use smartphones today, but that's really the idea back a couple of decades ago. So in looking at this, even though I just said I don't think we should predict 15 years into the future, I'm going to have a go anyway. So I looked, I found some very interesting things being done in Canada by an organization called Canada Contact Nord, which is a non-for-profit organization in Ottawa, I think, in Ontario. And they published a document looking at what they thought might be the influence of the relationship between web and online and learning. And I've picked out 5 of their predictions, and I've modified them a little bit to fit within our category here. So these are the 5 that are up on the screen for you. So first of all, I'm just going to go through them fairly quickly. First of all, mobile devices. I mean, clearly they're already influencing pedagogy, teaching and learning within higher education, and I think also in high schools. I think institutions are struggling, as Martha pointed out. We're struggling with how we deal with this kind of technology. It's very expensive for us. It challenges our skill set as teachers and so on in universities. But it's coming. We need to deal with it. We need to work out ways of doing that. What I'm particularly concerned about, I think, is that I'm not sure we have any idea what the mobile devices of 2030 will look like. They certainly won't look like the mobile devices we have today. So to predict how they're going to influence our teaching and so on, I think, again, is very brave or very foolish. But undoubtedly, it will impact on the way that we go about teaching and learning. Predictive analytics, which are now becoming part of nearly every higher education institution, both at the population and individual level, will certainly grow into the future. I think they'll become more sophisticated, but their exact role, I think, is quite unclear. Retention is a huge problem for universities, certainly in Australia, where I come from, and I'm assuming around the world. As we broaden out the demographic that goes to university, we're dealing with retention issues more so than we did decades ago. So the analytics promises a lot, that we'll be able to individualize our support for students to help them overcome those problem times they have in their study program. But I think the evidence isn't necessarily as strong to support that yet. It's early days, as Martha pointed out. So I think it'll be interesting to see how that relationship between the data we collect about how someone is learning and our ability to support them when they come across problem times. Internet of Things. Sir Tim Berners-Lee spoke about that in this morning's keynote address. He's certainly a lot more informed on that than I am. Undoubtedly, it will have an impact. I have no idea what that impact will be. I think it's a wild card. Tim also said, I think, if we think we can predict 15 years from now, we're actually being quite foolish. So it was quite nice to see he thought the same way I did. It's probably the first time I've ever been ahead of him, or maybe I'm behind him. There's also a strong push toward gamification and virtual reality. I think it's another wild card. I think we have no idea where that's going in 15 years, but it will be there. We'll need to deal with it. And finally, the last one, which is translation engines. It's bringing together languages and people being able to study in their own language. I think this is very, very exciting. It's going to be fascinating to see how well they're constructed and whether we are able to actually get to the point where learning becomes language independent rather than moving so heavily toward English as it does around the world. That one I'm going to be fascinated to watch. As a monolinguist, I'm going to be even more interested. So, thank you.